today. And typically this is, so hi, I'm Anne. I'm going to get started. I am the founder of Full Feedings. I love sleep. I have 3 kids. I'm a single mom. I have twins. My daughter just turned 6, which went by like this. And I have a daughter and then twin sons who are 3.5, who really just give me a run for my money because they never stop moving. I'm sure there's some boy mamas out there that can relate to that. Sorry to scare you, Candace. Madison, do you know what you're having?
Yeah, I'm having a little girl.
Oh, good. Perfect. All right. One of each. Fantastic. So, yeah, and I created this method. I found infant sleep to be very easy when, for me, I understood it very easily when my daughter was little, and I wanted to make that, but I found it was not explained in a way that was easy to understand. There's books out there and stuff, and I haven't read a book really since my daughter was born. It's certainly not the whole thing without falling asleep. So I wanted to create something that helped parents to easily understand how they could get their child to sleep through the night. Oh, we have another husband. Hi. Oh my God. I'm like so happy today that the dads are here. I love this. Okay. So,
I know I was invited. So
oh my God.
Once I got the green light, I was like, yeah.
Coming in. I know I love it because it gives a different perspective too. From your point of view. So I love that. So what's your first name?
I'm Max.
Hi, Max. Nice to meet you. So, all right, now we'll have you guys introduce yourselves. Maybe Madison and Max can go first. Just tell me your due date, if it's your first child, and maybe just a little bit, like maybe a sentence about what you are, interested in learning about infant sleep, or what you're scared of, or, just something.
So I'm Madison. This is my husband, Max. We're expecting our first child, who's a little girl, in early January 9th. Although as of last night, I was like kind of convinced I might be going into labor. So we'll see. She'll come when she'll come. But I would say, for the most part, like obviously it's a huge life change, but I think the sleep piece is the biggest piece for us that like we really, really have the most sort of anxiety around, just because that'll change the most, I think. And I guess as far as like questions, I think there's just so much information out there about like getting them on a schedule, but meeting their demands when they're hungry or they're tired. And how can we kind of like set ourselves up for success, but still maintain a level of flexibility within that, schedule we build.
That is the Full Feedings method. I'm super A-type, but I was like, babies are not. And I wanted parents to be able to begin from birth to establish healthy sleep habits and not say, oh, I have to wait till baby's 3 months old when you've already developed 1,000 habits that are not probably the best to set you up for success. But it's super common. I was the same way. I was like, I need to sleep. And a lot of it goes far beyond just sleeping, but like my mental health, baby's development, like it goes beyond just being like, okay, I just don't want to get up in the middle of the night anymore. So great. So you'll chime in with questions. And Candace.
Yeah, so I'm Candace. This is my husband, Neil. I am due end of February 28th. Happy it's not a leap year. We're in Toronto. We're having our first baby, so baby boy. Really everything Madison said, really just, there's so much information out there. So many books. Everybody you speak to says, read this book, read this book, read this book. Lots of people say, oh, there's nothing you can do right when the baby's born. Like their circadian rhythm is not really functioning yet. They don't really know day from night, don't worry about it until 3 to 6 months. And I'm like, oh goodness, that really scared me because, already when I get no sleep, it's not fun. So hearing about no sleep is, scares me. So, reading so much about the full, just seeing it on Instagram and hearing a little bit more about it and how you could be flexible and, things like you say, you could still rock your baby and things you always hear you can't do. It really just seems less overwhelming than a lot of different things out there. So yeah, I mean, really everything Madison said, and I'm sure more questions will come up, but everything from the beginning till the end is what we want to know.
Yes. And I'm going to address that. So the Full Feedings method is really a way of life. So that focuses on meeting your baby's needs, right? So like we're never the common misconceptions with infant sleep is that we're not responsive, we're letting them cry. It's all the thing, we're withholding food to force them to sleep, and all of that is like thrown out the window. And what I found and why I created this method was because when you focus on meeting your baby's needs fully from birth, from birth, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit, what these are, but from birth, really just paying attention to the feedings. I don't know if you guys, any of the attendees here, if you want to chime in with how old your baby is in weeks and or how far along you are in your pregnancy, but like make sure you differentiate, because some people will put like 36 and I'm like, are you pregnant or is the baby 36? Or because this is kind of for everyone. So do that as well, so I can kind of tailor it. Most of the time I'm going to tailor this to like new expectant parents and in that first kind of month. So okay, thank you guys. Oh my gosh, all these people, I love it. I'm like, so when we start from birth, everyone, whether you had a baby already or you're pregnant, you're going to feed your baby very quickly after you give birth. And if you have a C-section and can't, they're going to feed your baby. If you have a vaginal delivery and you can, and you're nursing, you'll nurse, or they'll get a bottle. The baby's going to eat shortly after they're born. And focusing on making sure your baby's food needs are met, and this is milk, is really the most important thing that you can work on from birth. Because, and they're going to tell you to do this anyways, any lactation consultant, any feeding specialist, they want you to make sure your baby's full so that they grow, so that they develop, so that their needs are met. And I have people question me all the time, like, what's the research between being full and sleep? And I'm like, I am the research. I've worked with thousands of parents that there is an absolutely a correlation between when a baby is full and how long that they sleep. It's just, and so Candace, you had mentioned circadian rhythms. That's something that obviously we're not getting that far into like thinking about that when the baby is born, and there are natural, rhythms of a baby. I tend to call them natural rhythms and not circadian. But there's also things like we want to be feeding our baby frequently so that their blood sugar is maintained, because when they're born, they need the food to maintain their blood sugar. And so these things, you're going to come home from the hospital or you're going to have a child and they're going to tell you, feed your baby at least every 3 hours. Okay. I go a little bit less than that, and I say 2 to 3. 3 is really your outside limit. So up until about 9 months old, you want to be feeding your baby every 3 hours. If you follow me on this, we are working to make sure your baby is fully fed during the day. The reason that they eat at night in the beginning is because their stomach isn't big enough to hold more food. So they have to eat more frequently in around the clock, and you absolutely should feed them. But also too, their bodies, again, own ability to maintain their blood sugar. They're going to need this food frequently. As they get older, they can hold more, they can go a little longer between feeds. And that's what we're really working on. So establishing those full feedings is like probably the most important ingredient in infant sleep as I see it. If your baby's hungry, it doesn't matter what else you're doing. It can lead to disruptive sleep because they're waking and they're hungry. The worst for me, I don't believe in cry it out. There's nothing in my method that is about crying. If you get to that point and you choose to do that, there's no judgment. I would make sure that you know that your baby's needs are fully met, because what I wanted to say was, if your baby's not fully fed and you try cry it out or some other drastic tactic, it might work it's going to be painful because it's going to be a really long period of time, and it's not going to sustain. So we have to constantly be making sure that baby's food needs are met. And this is milk, right? So, I don't know if there's a lot. We have an 8-month-old. We have some older babies, which I'll talk about in a second. If there's time, I will talk about solids and how that plays into the full feedings. But from birth, we want to make sure your baby's fully fed on milk. Breastfeeding. So what is a full feed? So many people are like, this is some ambiguous term, man, that you want to like drive us all crazy with. there are accepted norms. I get fried all the time. I have bottle feeding guidelines in my online program that are from Johns Hopkins and WebMD. So they're just standard accepted norms. They're averages. This is like an average. There's no, full is really relative to your baby, but there are accepted, an average size baby, they're going to assume based on a weight of an average size baby, I'm sure that's how they calculate them, this X amount of ounces would be full. Breastfeeding, time is our only indication. So you're working to breastfeed for 30 minutes, including burping. So usually I'm like, when you start, baby's born, 5 minutes burp for up to 5, 5 minutes feed, burp for up to 5. You're going to get into a nice rhythm where you're establishing those full feedings, and you're going to have to work at it because baby's going to be tired. Anyone that has a newborn on here, the babies, they sleep, eat, and are sleeping basically the entire time from when they're born. But working on establishing these, it will help you to, sorry, I just lost my, see, mom brain is real. It doesn't ever go away. So working on establishing the full feedings is going to set you up. It's what you can work on from birth. Cause like I said, you're going to feed your baby. So you want to look at each feed as another time to practice full feedings. Throw out the idea that it's going to always be the same, that it's going to be perfect. It's not. Like, what you want to accept is that you're going to do your best. And if it totally sucks, you're going to just try again. And you have to try to like kind of look at the whole day, but also kind of look at these cycles where you're like, I'm going to try to feed my baby fully. I'm going to talk about in a second, like a routine for the daytime. And then I'm going to put them down. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to try again. That's like life, right? So, I want people to kind of understand that, because everyone's like, well, what if it's a short nap? What if it's this? This is where the flexibility comes in. I do not believe in fixed feed times. Okay. So you're going to read books that say baby's going to eat at 7, 10, 1, 4, 7, and 10, or worse, because I don't like a 4-hour feed schedule, 7, 11, 3, 7, and then 10, a dream feed. I think being flexible with anything with your baby is more beneficial. It's easier to establish consistent nighttime sleep when you are flexible. Why is that? Because we can't control many things, right? We can't control how long baby sleeps, really. We can help them, but if they don't want to sleep, they're not going to sleep. But if we're not flexible, meaning let's say you feed your baby for 30 minutes and they go to sleep by an hour, and then they only sleep for an hour. Well, that's been 2 hours between feeds. I would feed them again. That's how I suggest doing it, because most breastfed babies will take it. Bottle fed babies will normally take it if you establish that as practice from the beginning. And it's going to make your life easier, because what would happen, let's just say this is an example. Let's say they wake at 7 and you feed them for 30 minutes till 7:30, and then their wake time is 60 minutes. They go to bed at 8 a.m. and they only sleep till 9. So many people are like, well, I can't feed my baby until 10. What do I do? Well, 10, if we're working with an optimal wake time at 60 minutes, is really when they need to go to bed again. So now what do? We're holding these fixed feed times, which will end up compromising your baby's ability to be asleep by their optimal wake time, which I'll talk about in a second. You guys are probably like, what? It will compromise their ability to be asleep by their optimal wake time, because you're trying to force these fixed feed times. It's far better to just be a little bit flexible, split the difference. Maybe you wait it 30 minutes and you kind of, delay the feed into the cycle. Because if let's say you wait and you're like, no, baby's eating at 7 and 10, and they get overly tired, right? And so this is kind of a good segue into like managing your baby's day and an age appropriate routine, how important having an age appropriate routine is for infant sleep. The things that go into age appropriate routines: optimal wake time, which I just mentioned. Optimal wake time is the amount of time the baby should stay awake. It's not the amount of time that they could stay awake, right? So this is a very big designation to make. Your baby, when they're born, some babies want to stay up all day. Some babies don't. You get to this place where you're like, you want to help guide them. So we're taking their needs with what we know is kind of like accepted for that age, and we're kind of marrying them, right? We're not ignoring them. We're not just favoring the clock. we're taking a balance and we kind of manage baby's day every single day with these like age appropriate, norms. I have created, so like I have an online program where I have monthly guides that show you what is a good starting place for every age. I sometimes laugh at myself because they're very accurate. I'm like, they're just a gift from the universe. Sometimes I'm like, wow, these babies really transition right around when the guide says, and it's monthly. So it's every 4.5 weeks, you're going to see a transition. Super important to note, your baby's needs change so frequently from birth until they're a year old, right? So it's like I think they triple their weight, or some of them like 2.5 times their weight, their size doubles, that you go through all these things where their needs change so frequently. So what can happen is, you have your baby and everything's going swimmingly, and then all of a sudden you're like, I was making sleep progress and things just fell apart. And it's like, no, the baby's needs just changed, right? So then you use the guide as your beacon to say, okay, what can I shift? Maybe your baby's a little ahead of the guide, maybe they're a little behind the guide. Everything is like incremental. We don't make these big shifts, but again, optimal wake time. So the age appropriate daytime routine, which is very important for consistent nighttime sleep. I don't, just for reference, we do not do a guide. There is a guide if you were to join my program in month 1 for like the overachievers that want to they're like, no, I got this. I'm going to start trying to implement this gently. But I don't usually suggest paying attention to what's going on, like wake time wise, nap length, that kind of stuff, until baby's about 4.5 weeks old. And part of that is just being mindful that like, if you're a first time parent, like the first 4.5 weeks, like can be a little bit of an adjustment period. And we're all just coming home from the hospital, and it depends on what birth you had. And is there complications? Were you in the NICU? So it's like, in the beginning, I really just focus on the full feeds. There are some outer limits. One thing I'm going to talk about in an age appropriate daily routine, optimal wake time, number of naps is very important. Total daytime sleep, big one. Okay. No one pays attention. Your baby can only sleep X amount of hours in the daytime if you want 12 hours at night. And we work to limit that really from 2, 3, 4 weeks old. We start to make sure that we're not letting babies sleep too long. If they sleep too long during the day, I always say you either wake them during the day or they're going to wake you at night, because they just don't have as much of a sleep need if they're sleeping too much during the day. First month, your pediatrician, your lactation person, they're going to tell you during the day to feed at least every 3 hours. If I've ever met someone, I think 12 hours by 12 weeks, the book goes a little further. Most people are going to say your outer limit is you're waking the baby every 3 hours during the day to feed, because that helps them to maintain their blood sugar, gain weight that they need, all that stuff. That is going to limit your daytime sleep when you do that. So you don't really need to think about it in the beginning. I would tell you to feed every 2 to 3 hours fully in the first month, and that will help to limit the daytime sleep. Common problem, babies got days and nights confused. It just is too much daytime sleep. That's it. So if you start, like, say you come home from the hospital, you're like, Anne said not to pay attention to this, we're just establishing full feedings, and you start to notice that your baby's up at night and staying awake for extended periods of time, you want to start limiting that sleep a little bit further during the day. And when you do it, you lessen by like 15 minutes, makes a big difference for babies. And you just move slowly so you can kind of maximize your daytime and your nighttime sleep. But it's very important to limit the daytime sleep, because again, if they sleep too much during the day, they won't be sleeping at night. I have tons of questions in here and I'm not even, oh, someone asked about sleep environment, which is actually kind of a good segue to go in here, but I don't, there's enough environments going on that, I don't believe in like, oh, make it bright during the day and I do think make it dark at night. I'm an optimal sleep environment person. If you're home, make their sleep environment optimal, unless they're having a nap and you're staying awake and watching them in a bassinet or something downstairs. But I'm all for optimal ways, like environment when they sleep. White noise. The reason I think people often say don't, these are sleep props, white noise, this dark, is because when our parents who made those rules were babies and when they had us, they didn't have cell phones. They didn't have covers for their car seat. They didn't even half of us weren't even in car seats. So they didn't have the availability to recreate a sleep environment, which is why I think people say, don't do that. It's going to create a bad habit. Well, yeah, back then it would create a bad habit because you couldn't recreate it if you went out for a walk. Now I throw white noise on a phone. The baby shusher app is great. Cover the stroller, and you can I really love naps on the go. You got to get out of the house. The idea, yes, I want you to stay home the majority of the time and work on this and get your baby sleeping by 8 weeks, and then you'll have the rest of your life to go out. But your mental health is also very important. You need to get outside. There's nothing wrong with your baby taking a nap on the go as long as they're asleep by their optimal wake time. That's all I care about. And you commit to, at least a 45-minute nap.
Hey, Anne.
Yes, tell me, Madison.
Can I ask this was on one of my list of questions actually about sleep props, white noise being one of them. And I agree with you. Yeah. We got like the shusher or whatever to throw in the
baby shusher. It's so good.
Right. I hear it's wonderful. What about the big one, which is the snoo? Any thoughts on if that's too much of a sleep prop?
Are they recording this? Yes, they are.
Oh, sorry.
Some babies love the snoo.
Whether it's the snoo or not, I know there's other bassinets that also have technology.
The snoo is the most popular.
Right.
I'm gonna take a beat. I didn't use one. I like to make it hard on myself because I didn't want to have transitions down the road. Some people love the snoo. If your baby loves the snoo, it's a win-win situation. And it's a good thing that you can rent them now, because if your baby doesn't love the snoo, you're not out like $1,500. I think that was smart of them to kind of do it. Most parents that I come across, the snoo gets in the way, right? So here's the thing. If the snoo will not rock your baby to sleep, right? I find that optimal wake time is very important, okay? I'm going to tell you to rock your baby to sleep. I think it's the most loving, the fastest way to get them to sleep. It makes sure they don't get overly tired. You put the baby in the snoo and they don't let the snoo rock them to sleep. The contraption to get into the snoo is so complex that you wake the baby. So it's like you couldn't rock the baby to sleep and put them in the snoo to continue the nap. So that it makes it difficult, I think, for parents to help, which is a main tenet of my method. Is I think it's better to have something that you can, as a parent, intervene easily. And I find that the snoo, it's hard for that. And it's something that I hope that they kind of work with, because when there are babies that love to be rocked by it, I have parents that are it actually does everything they say. It extends them a little bit at night. But so here's my other thing. I believe that babies wake at night because they're hungry, they're overly tired, or because they slept too much, right? So there aren't these they're not waking for the pacifier. I believe they wake for these other reasons, and then they can't fall back asleep. Then the pacifier is an issue. They're not waking because they want the pacifier. They're waking for something else. So what I do in my method is I stop that waking, and then there's no problem. So the snoo sometimes worries me, and I know he's a doctor, but if it does extend sleep and your baby is not ready to maybe they're not full, maybe their needs aren't met, and then it's extending the sleep, I'm sure they would still wake up if the needs, you'll know if your baby's starving, but there are some things that I find, to be problematic about it. I think if you're on the fence about it, rent it. I don't know what the minimum is. See if it works. I'm kind of a begin as you mean to go. So I made it hard on myself in the beginning, and full disclosure, and they were supervised. I used a glider sometimes for naps. I had twins, right? And so they had 2 different wake times really, and they were born 8 weeks premature. So I was dealing with prematurity, 2 different wake times, but with anyone, I don't know if there's any twin moms expectant on here, but you have to put them, it's tandem everything. So Tommy was my slug. He would go to sleep and Teddy wasn't ready to go to sleep, but he would go to sleep and then he'd wake 45 minutes later. So I had to help him a lot to extend so that Tommy could sleep, so that Teddy's needs were met. And it was this constant balance. And I find that anything you use that is like the snoo or even bassinets, any of them that move, carrier naps, stroller naps, everything is a police yourself situation, right? You gotta, like, this is like adulthood, right? Like, use whatever you need to get through, but police yourself. Don't let that become the norm, because if that's the only norm, you're gonna wind, like, I have parents that come to me and they say, we just alternate like holding our baby upright all night. And I'm like, I mean, that's not even remotely sustainable for more. I wouldn't be able to do that for more than a week. So I would, but I say all this, you guys have to be comfortable with where your babies are sleeping, because that's also important too. So it's a very personal decision about where the baby sleeps. My sons were in the NICU. I came home, I was like, I'm going to use the Mamaroo because they had reflux real bad. They're like, Ann, they've been sleeping on their backs for 5 weeks in the NICU, like put them in the crib. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. And I like do this. So just pay attention. I think writing things down is super important. Like, I'm going to tell you guys everything, write it down, like write down what's going on. If it was in the snoo, was it a shitty nap? Like, because that's going to help you see patterns and, pay attention to this stuff. Pay attention to if the baby's staying awake too long, if they're sleeping too long during the day, and you will start to see a correlation between how much they eat, how long they're awake, how well they nap during the day, and then what happens at night. Just so you know, I don't even focus on nighttime sleep. I just focus on the daytime. So we focus on the daytime from birth, and most babies naturally sleep through the night with my method on their own. There's nothing to do. There's no sleep training. We're not waiting. I know, Candace, that was one of your questions. Like, when do you start sleep training? You're never going to have to sleep train, because you're going to start this early. Even if your baby's a little bit older, my method was designed in a way that we make sure your baby's needs are met at any age. You can start. And then once we know that their needs are met, there are signs, like if they're still waking at night, if they don't sleep through on their own, then we would help them to get through the night. You stop feeding them at night only when we know that their needs are met. So it's not backwards. A lot of pediatricians will tell you, oh, your baby's not eating enough during the day, take away the night feeds and that'll force them to eat food. No, like I find that to be highly ineffective. I don't believe in half feeds. I think you should keep all feeds full, and then we move the milk around, right? So by let's say 8 to 12 weeks old, your baby can sleep through the night. So they can consume enough food during the daytime hours. And that's really from, let's say, 6 a.m. to a dream feed. I'll talk about a dream feed in a second because it's my favorite. From 6 a.m. until a dream feed, an average size baby can consume enough food in the daytime that there is not a need to feed them at night from a like a physical standpoint, right? So that's what we're working on. Every day you're like, okay. And if you have a bad feed, you move on to the next cycle and you try again. We don't force feeds. We don't like force them to eat. You just gently work towards establishing, and it's going to be work. Like, for anyone who's pregnant, expecting, that is the work of the 4.5 weeks. Keep your baby awake long enough to take a full feeding, which involves sometimes like undressing them, which is what the NICU and even the labor and delivery nurses will do as well. Eating is so important for them to develop and grow. So why it's not prioritized, and like, trust me, when my sons were in the NICU, they would do stuff that really on a deep level made me uncomfortable, because I was like, you're literally like, this is my newborn babies, and you're like undressing them and they are like a little bit uncomfortable. But the importance of eating fully was greater than their discomfort or their temporary discomfort. And it doesn't last forever. So using a cold wipe, getting them stimulated, taking them outside for a breath of fresh air, walking around the room, you're going to find ways to stimulate your baby. and you're going to be exhausted by it because you just had a baby. But that is the most work. If I could convince every parent to just do that from birth, if you did nothing else that I said and you just established full feedings from birth, your baby would fall into a really nice routine. By 8 to 12 weeks old, you're going to know what your baby's baseline is. So in 24 hours, let's say whatever they're eating in that period, whether that's 30 minutes at the breast or we don't count minutes. I don't count minutes for breastfeeding. You kind of just count the number of feeds and work to keep them around the same time. I want it to be 30 minutes, but it doesn't, it might be different for your baby. But that's going to give you an idea of what you need to move. So like, let's say baby's 8 weeks old and you're doing a dream feed and then they're waking at like 4 a.m., 4 a.m., which is super common. That's right before they sleep for the night. Whatever they're eating at 4 a.m. is kind of a loose indicator of what we need to move to the daytime, right? And most babies will naturally do this. We move milk. People think, oh, we're going to drop the milk, but you're like, so they're going to eat less. Like, no, we have to keep their baseline full the same for their needs to be met. So this idea of dropping feeds is really outdated. And I'm trying to get people to start thinking about it in terms of moving the milk and not dropping it, because that's essentially what we're doing. It's not going to be ounce for ounce. I'm not going to have you being like, it was only 3.25 ounces. Like it's rough, but that's your good baseline. And to kind of figure out, okay, if I wanted to, like, let's say you're from a dream feed to 3 a.m, baby's eating 5 ounces and you start to increase the daytime intake, 0.5 ounces more a feed, breastfed babies naturally do this. So there's nothing to like do as long as you keep that time up. And let's say you're like, I'm ready. I want to sleep through the night. I know I just need to move this food. You start move food the daytime. What you do then, once you've moved the food and you can confidently say that your baby's needs are met or that you think that they're met, you simply just rock them back to sleep when they wake for that feed. Some of them just stop waking on their own, which is what I want for every parent. If you get to a place between 8 to 12 weeks and you're like, that's a wrap, I'm done. You rock them back to sleep. You pick them up. There's no creating. I want to touch on this too. There's no creating bad habits about touching your baby. It literally makes me see red that parents are like, oh, don't pick the baby up. I'm like, so we go back to, why are babies waking? They're hungry, they're overly tired, or they slept too much during the day. When you make sure, like, let's say your baby starts waking at night and someone's like, don't touch it. Picking your baby up is not going to create a bad habit, because if they wake at night, the next day you're going to go back and say, are their needs fully met? They're not. Oh, maybe they need to eat a little bit more. Sometimes a new waking is a sign that we need to slightly increase daytime intake. They're a little bit bigger, full is a little bit more. And then what you do is you meet their needs, you increase to meet their needs at their age, and usually they stop waking. But picking your baby up, if they're waking from being hungry, tired, overly tired, or overly rested, it's good. Shushing them in a crib is going to take forever. They probably won't go back to sleep. Obviously, if they're hungry, you would always feed your child. Like, I need to say that again. If your child is hungry, you always feed them. That's a given, right? But you're not going to create a bad habit by picking them up, because I don't think that they wake because they're being picked up. It's a really twisted thing that they've made parents have this guilt about holding their child. I don't really understand why. And I mean, when I had mine too, I think all those things were in my head, like, you're going to create a bad habit, all these different things. And I just don't think that could be further from the truth. Some people are asking, and feel free, Candace, you guys, Madison, chime in if you guys have specific questions. I'm kind of looking here. Oh, I have some, go ahead.
Yeah, it was actually a similar question that I saw in the chat, but you hear different things about, the first 6 months or whatnot, the bassinet should be in the room, the baby will sleep better and it's safer. Or some people are like, no, right away, kind of like you said, baby's going in the crib in the room. Is there, do you have any thoughts on that? The best too.
I have the thoughts that the American Academy of Pediatrics tells you, and that's that the baby has to be in your room for 6 months. And that's all I can say. I personally did not, I felt comfortable with a monitor. I was practicing safe sleep. So, alone back crib. So I felt really comfortable to have baby in their own room. Sometimes like I know that's obviously from a safety standpoint, it becomes a little bit like twins. I'm like, where am I putting all these cribs in my, it's not sustainable. I think I would follow, my best suggestion is do your research. Safe sleep is the best. A lot of people end up not doing safe sleep because they're tired. So like, hopefully we're going to get y'all sleeping so that you can practice safe sleep. But do your research, and then whatever you're comfortable with, just do that. And know that if your baby's in your room, it doesn't make a difference to me. The only thing for me was that babies are really noisy, which can be good in the beginning when you have that fear. But as for me personally, I would have to literally shut my brain off and go, and you've done everything you can to make sure, like, go to sleep, because you'll get to a point where the baby will be sleeping. And as new mom, you can't turn the anxiety off. You can't turn the brain off thinking I have to protect this little baby. And so I got to a place I would sleep in the room next to my first, my twins. I was like right there. So like I could hear the monitor, to be honest, you hear the babies and then you hear the monitor. So it's like double loud, but I was comfortable with that. And I think, you have to do whatever you're comfortable with, in that regard. Let's talk. Someone asked about a preemie, and I'm also a preemie mama. And Madison, I was going to tell you, Madison, my daughter came 4 weeks early. Her birthday was 6 days ago, and she was due on Christmas. So baby girl could be coming.
Yeah.
So preemie, if your baby is born 36 weeks or earlier, there are delays. Okay. So you can sometimes see a delay in what is full, because if you have a preemie, sometimes they're smaller, right? So like my preemie twins were born at 32 weeks, but they each weighed 5 pounds. So they were big. They still slept through the night at 11 weeks old, but they were always delayed. They weren't delayed in feed amounts because they are massive children, but they were delayed in their wake time. So sometimes you can see delays. It's not usually week for week. So if, let's say this person asked 3 months, 6 weeks adjusted. Okay. So usually what I say, so this baby was born at 34 weeks. I usually say split the difference. So baby's 6 weeks early, you could try delaying by 3 weeks and seeing what happens. Everything with babies is like, make your own rules and then follow them for like a week and see if it works. And then if it doesn't, you make a new rule. So for a preemie, I would say try to adjust, or, if you're on the cusp, if baby's 5 weeks early, try to adjust, use the age appropriate routine, and then see. That's when sleep cues can be a little bit more helpful to kind of see if, is baby getting a little bit more tired. My twins at 1 year old, typically I recommend a 3-hour awake window. My twins at 1 year old still went to bed at 2 hours. I couldn't stretch them. And they slept through the night. You use your nighttime sleep as kind of your like beacon of like, okay, is this okay? So that's how you kind of adjust. Someone asked, oh, go ahead, Madison.
I was just gonna say, I know that like daytime sleep is a big piece to this, a pillar of this method.
Yes.
When does the daytime end? I feel like I have friends who like put their kid to bed at 6 p.m. because they like to have like the evening, not infants, but like their, 8-month-old child, for instance. And then I have friends who like don't put their baby down till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And how does that kind of
don't be that parent. My twins are 3.5 and they still go to bed at 6:30, and I don't get them from their cribs till 7:30 in the morning. They're just getting rid of their nap like all together. So that's why they're doing like 13 hours at night, which is heavenly, just so you know. Parent to parent, I don't care what kind of lifestyle you have, long term, the best thing you could do is to use normal, I say normal bedtime, but like circadian rhythm. So we'll go back to that for a second, because I'm going to talk about, when you're establishing nighttime sleep, I really want to follow those natural rhythms of the baby. So the best thing to do is to start at your day between 6 to 7:30 a.m. And then you're really trying to maintain 12 hours of daytime for 12 hours of nighttime. People get screwed up when they have the baby. They're like, oh, the baby woke at 6. I fed it fully. It went back to sleep until 8. And then they think, oh, I'll make 8 p.m. bedtime. That hours after, when you're working to establish consistent nighttime sleep, I find that the circadian rhythm, that time in the morning that they think is like nighttime, is actually counting towards daytime sleep based on baby's body and what is naturally occurring. And what can happen is it can really screw you up because it gets too much daytime sleep, then they fight their naps, and then it just snowballs from there. I prefer, like, when your baby's born, your day is going to actually be 13 hours. Okay. So my guides, I go 7 a.m. till 8 p.m. really for like the second month guide and the third month guide. So like 1 to 2 months and 2 to 3 months. By 3 to 4 months, you get into it 12-hour daytime. The reason in the beginning I do a 13-hour day is to accommodate an extra feed so that we're setting y'all up to get fully fed during the day. It's going to be a far better situation. Why I feed like closer together and kind of add that is because even if you like feed further apart, you'll end up having more for the day as a total, even if baby's eating a little bit less per feed. So 13 hours of daytime, I really would try to aim for bedtime, like first 2 months, 8 p.m. First month you come home, it's going to be all over the place. And you're just going to be like in 3-hour cycles around the clock. I don't mean to scare anyone, but that's what's going to happen. And as you keep baby full at night, then, so I would take your daytime 7 a.m., anytime from 6 p.m., or I'm sorry, 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. would be in the beginning. That's what I would consider your daytime. I do a dream feed, and I know I said I was going to talk about this. Dream feed is an extra feed. Because we're stretching the time between feeds, that's what gets you sleeping. It's not stretching the sleep, right? So as baby can consume more, they can sleep longer, from an energy standpoint, because they have that to actually sleep, but then they're not as hungry as quicker. Because we're working on doing that, you want this extra dream feed is really a chance to just get them another feed. Great time for dads. If you're breastfeeding and you're like at some point going to offer a bottle, or if you're bottle feeding, it's an excellent time for partners to get involved because mom can do bedtime. If you're pumping, you do bedtime, put baby to sleep, clean up whatever you need to clean up, pump, go to sleep. Partner does dream feed in a bottle, and then mom gets to go and sleep until 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And you start to kind of work together to kind of divide and conquer this. If you're not giving a bottle, some people have to give it right away because they're jaundiced in the NICU, different circumstances, do what you're comfortable with. If you're breastfeeding, they're going to probably tell you not to introduce a bottle right away. I breastfed my daughter exclusively for 6 months. And then I was giving bottles during that time. And then I supplemented a little bit with formula. She was jaundiced and she had to take a bottle, and she took a bottle. I had to pump from birth and take a bottle from birth. My twins, same thing. I had to pump from birth. So, just as long as you're working on establishing however the feeding situation you want, if you want to throw a bottle in, it's a great time to do that. As a note, and I know we're kind of getting close to time, I want to make sure I answer everyone's questions, but the dream feed, the baby will be awake for that. So like the first 6 weeks of life, it's really just another feed. Your baby is going to eat at this time from birth anyways, because you're going to be having a newborn that's waking every 3 hours. Keep it in place. I know it's so tempting. So many parents are like, I don't want to stay up till 10. I used to go to sleep for 1 hour and felt like a garbage can when I woke up, but it was the best it just made it so that I could do the feed, and it got me a little bit extra sleep. Don't try staying up, set an alarm or have your partner get involved in that way. And the benefit of a dream feed, by 8 to 12 weeks old, your baby can maintain their blood sugar for about 7 to 8 hours without needing to eat. I want those hours to be from 10:30 until the morning. Okay. Without the dream feed, you still can get consistent nighttime sleep. It's going to be closer to 12 to 16 weeks if you're not doing a dream feed, because baby cannot maintain their blood sugar for 12 hours and or hold enough food for that will get them through 12 hours until they're like 12 to 16 weeks old. Candace, go.
Question about the dream feed. So I think you
Yes.
kind of mentioned it, but I saw some questions too. So it's roughly around 10 p.m. ish. And would you wake, so say the baby is sleeping, you said you put on the alarm to make sure you wake the baby up to give them
Yes.
that feed. Okay.
Yes. I like doing it at the same time. From birth, they're going to eat at this time anyways. It's going to be 10 p.m. It's going to be 11 p.m. It's going to depend on how your day goes. Once you get to like 4.5 weeks old and you start to pay attention to the baby's routine, you do want to kind of start to like gently implement these times. So yes, if your baby is still sleeping at 10:30, you go in, you don't wake them. I mean, you're going to have to change their diaper probably until they're about 4, 5, 6 weeks old. Do that at the beginning of the dream feed. So then hopefully they fall back asleep eating. And you just offer a full feed. In the beginning, I do kind of want you to rouse the baby to take a full feed. Again, half feeds, half sleep. Like I just posted about this the other day. Because I see sleep from a standpoint of their need, mainly their caloric need being met amongst other ingredients. If you feed them half the time, it often backfires. Anyone that might have a night nurse, a lot of times night nurses love to give half feeds, like doulas, and they really can backfire because baby actually ends up eating less time. So I prefer to keep all of the feeds full and then we move them. Someone asked about moving the milk to the daytime with a breastfed baby. If you keep the time up, they should naturally do this on their own. Your milk is incredible. You know, I'm not certified in lactation, but it does change and evolve as, you know, the saliva is passed from the baby's mouth through the ducts in your breast, and that that tells your breast what to do. It's so incredible that like, if you're getting sick, or the baby, if you're sick, it will start to pass the antibodies through your breast milk ahead of time to help protect your baby. It's quite amazing. So with moving the milk, if you're breastfed, it should be doing it on its own as long as you're keeping the feed time up. For breastfed moms, if you get into a situation where you're like, baby doesn't want to eat for 30 minutes in one sitting, I don't care if you do eat, play, eat, sleep. Oh, my baby likes to feed to sleep. Great. Do play, eat, sleep. Just make sure you're feeding the baby the same amount of time each day. That's important. That's why you're going to track it. And make sure if you are feeding to sleep or feeding before baby goes to sleep, that you're not doing so at the expense of their optimal wake time. So just give yourself time. It takes a little bit of finesse to make sure that they're falling asleep like right at, you know, when they're supposed to go to sleep. I'm looking at other questions. Let me see. Oh my gosh, there's so many.
There's also some, I know you mentioned, I think some people joined later. I think some people put in the Q&A box as well. So.
I have the Q&A. Yeah, I see them. Thank you. I was like, I got it this time. Last time I didn't see it till the end. And then I was like, oh gosh. So hold on. Oh, so bottle fed babies. One thing that parents, and like, I'm going to tell a story. So when my daughter was born, I used an up a baby car seat. And like 6 months in, I posted a picture of her in the car seat or something. And my friend messages me and she's like, you know, the headrest moves, right? And I was like, no, I actually did not know that, because all the manuals I got when I was pregnant, I was completely overwhelmed and couldn't even fathom reading something. I'm telling you this because most parents forget that there are leveled nipples on a bottle, and that you need to change the bottle nipples to make sure that your baby will be fully fed. If you forget to change I can't tell you how many parents, 8 months olds, are like, my baby will refuse the bottle. And I'm like, well, what level nipple are you using? And they're like, oh, the one that it came with. Well, the one that it came with is sometimes a newborn nipple or a level 1. If it's too slow, it's like drinking a thick milkshake through a straw. Your baby will just give up. They do not want to work for that, you know, bottle. If you're breastfeeding and you have a lactation consultant tell you to remain on a level 1 nipple for the eternity of time, I do challenge that. I think in the beginning, If you're choosing to breastfeed, it's very important to establish that healthy breastfeeding relationship. And you can do that with a level 1 nipple if you're offering some bottles and you're breastfeeding. By the time baby is 1 month old, you're going to have a well-established, you're either going to have decided breastfeeding is not for me and moved on to something else, or you will have a well-established breastfeeding relationship. At that time, you need to use age appropriate level nipples as long as you're breastfeeding at least half of the time. Where there's like nipple confusion and babies refuse mom, I've never in my life heard of a baby refusing their mother's breast when they have a well-established nursing relationship. My sons were tube fed from birth, and then they were bottle fed, and they didn't even let me, I could nurse to practice because they had to gain weight. So when I got home and tried to nurse them, sleepy tandem nursing twins, it was like game over. It just didn't work. And then I quickly had to go to exclusively bottle feeding and pumping. That's when you see them refuse the breast because they don't want to work for it. They're used to the faster flow. Right? Correct? Level nipple size is so important to make sure that your baby is fully fed at all ages. They usually go up at like 3, 6, 9 months. Sometimes I recommend sizing up about a month sooner is when I start to see, you'll know, like your baby will be taking and all of a sudden you'll be like, they don't want to take the bottle anymore. And that's when you know, that's probably you'll be like, oh, I remember that she said that. So, and just order them. Like if you're planning to bottle feed, once you figure out if, okay, I love Dr. Brown's bottles. I know they have a lot of parts, but they are the most widely accepted bottle. Once you figure out, okay, this bottle system is going to work for my family, then just get all the nipples so that you have them. And that way you can have that in case you need to, change it. Someone asked when you stop dream feeding. That's actually a really great question. You can keep it as long as you like. I have moms that are really committed to exclusively nursing. They keep it until the baby is 8, 9, 10, whenever they feel comfortable. You can put it back. Like say you get rid of it and then you have like a sickness and baby didn't eat enough during the day. It's always available to you to offer that extra feed. So you can kind of keep it as long as you like, and you can really start it. Someone else asked about dream feeding for an older baby. It's just an extra feed and it's just going to help you. A lot of what my method is giving you guys the confidence as parents to make decisions, right? Nothing worse than your baby waking in the middle of the night and you being like, are they hungry? Are they tired? I don't know what to do. And then it's a terrible feeling as a parent. So this is going to give you ingredients so that you can say, you know what, I'm fairly certain that you're fed during the day. If all of a sudden you wake at night, I'm not going to go back to feeding you. I'm just going to help you back to sleep and kind of reevaluate. So someone asked about how many feeds is enough feeds in the day. It depends on the baby's age. Usually by like, as a rule of thumb, by 4 months old, you'd be on like a 90-minute wake window and there would be 5 daytime feeds. Before that, you're going to have 5 to 6. Newborn babies eat 8 to 10 in a 24-hour period, at night too. Let's just see if I'm missing. I don't know. Can you guys all see the chat too? Am I missing anything? Are there more questions? Snacker. Someone asked about snacking. I don't know how old your baby is if it's a snacker, but all you can really do is just work to, I used to set like a timer. So this can happen 6 months old, they become very distracted. They want to like learn new skills and you'll be like at your wit's end trying to feed your child. I used to just say like small goals, like 1 more minute, right? So if your baby's a snacker, every time you sit down to feed, just be like, when they start to show signs that they're done, be like, nope, 1 more, I'm going to try for 1 more minute. Set small goals that don't force anything upon your baby, but that help you to like police yourself to kind of increase this feed time. Worst case scenario for a snacker, then you could do eat, play, eat, sleep. I don't like doing that in every cycle because it's a lot of work, but that's always available as well. And if you do eat, play, eat, sleep, that's where you feed baby twice in a cycle. You just want the 2 eats to equal a full feed. So I don't want you feeding for 30 and 30, that equals 30 together. And it just gives you kind of an option to make it flexible, because not all babies, you know, my kids were pigs. Like I get kids that literally eat beautifully. Then there's some that have issues. Anything you have, like my best advice, like as a parent, is also like trust your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, you know, make sure you stay on top of it with your pediatrician. Some kids have lip ties, tongue ties, you know, different reflux is a common one. But all through all of that, there's always options available to parents, and you can still work on sleep. So I hate when parents come to me and they're like, I get it, because I had reflux babies myself, but they're like, oh, I need to put this on hold because my baby has reflux. And it's like, you don't actually need to put it on hold. You can still get your baby to sleep. So does anyone have any other answer? I don't think I answered everyone's questions, but
I think there's one question here that maybe it's kind of what you just explained, but the method for encouraging the baby to take more during the day.
Okay, yeah, I mean, you just work at it. Like, I want you to start from birth so that this isn't a problem. That's my real goal in life, is to not have parents coming to me at 6 months with problematic eaters. But I understand that, you know, not everyone has found me when they're pregnant. So you just do your best. Like, that's it. Like, parenthood is just finding ways to, you know, maybe it is distracting the baby. Maybe it is going into a room to feed them. You just have to kind of get creative, you know, with techniques to increase the feed times. And, you know, it's different for every baby. So it's kind of hard to be like, oh, try this, it'll definitely work. You know, but just stick with it and don't give up, and, you know, reach out for help. Like, if your baby really isn't, I have some babies that eat very little, and I'm like, you got to call your doctor and make sure, you know, something else isn't going on. So Madison, any other questions? Max? Everyone's excited to have their baby now.
Yeah.
It's the best.
A little more prepared.
No, you can. And like, you will, like, so, and for anyone on, like, I have an online program that I help parents with. It's super affordable. I wanted to make this accessible to anyone who wanted to have sleep. It's, you know, very gentle. And I email with parents literally all day long, helping them kind of tailor the program to their babies as well, because every baby is different. So yeah, so that's everything. Thank you guys for joining. Someone asked, I'll just answer this really. How do you slowly bring bedtime closer to 8? I'm kind of personally like, you would start your day at 8 or 7, and then you just work through the routine and try to put your baby to sleep. So I haven't posted this yet, but I have a post prep that says, if you want your baby to go to sleep, get them ready for bed. So 8 p.m. is your bedtime. So you're doing everything right before that to get them to sleep, a bath, you know, shifting it. And that will help. And also starting your day at 7 in the morning. We can control when we start baby's day and bedtime loosely, right? So those are things we focus on, the things that we can control, and kind of let go of the rest and just, you know, roll with it. So if anyone has questions, DM me, please. I'd be happy to answer. And thank you guys all for joining. And Candace and Madison, thank you guys so much. I sent you both emails. Let me know when babies get here. And yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Bye.